Next topic is active listening. Now we concentrate too much on speaking, but we have to realize that communication is much more than speaking. Listening is equally important, if not more. Alright, so let's talk about listening a little more. Listening is like the most powerful form of acknowledgement and a way of saying you are important. If you don't listen to your boss, and if your boss is saying something, you don't listen to your boss, the boss will feel hurt, and he will have this feeling that you're not giving importance, not listening. Alright, so listening is a way of saying I value you, you are important. Why be a good listener? Actually, you have to be a good listener to be recognized and remembered, and to be feel valued. Let me tell you something. We all would know at least one person who knows a lot about a lot of people, but many do not know much about that person. I'll tell you. I'll give you my example. I have a friend who's a very, very good listener. He knows a lot of things about me, but I don't know as much about him as much he knows about me. Why? It's because he's a good listener. He listens, and this world does not have a lot of great listeners. But if you want to go up the ladder, your job will be to speak less and to listen more, to speak less and to understand more. Alright, now let's look at some techniques of active listening. One, focus your attention when you're listening to some person or whoever. Focus your attention, listen to the content very carefully, what they're saying. Eliminate distractions if any. So let's say if you are in a place where there are a lot of people walking around, just forget them, just concentrate on the person that you're listening to. Find the area of interest, and then listen to the intent with empathy. If somebody is sad, if they're expressing something, in that case listen to it and empathize. You can't be very cool, and just because somebody has told you, or just because Amit has told you to listen very carefully, doesn't mean that you just listen with a flat face, right? You need to empathize, and if they are feeling bad about something, tell them, be involved. Demonstrate interest and attention. That's an extension of the last point. So just say that you're there in the conversation. Just give your attention and say things like, and demonstrate it and say things like, I understand, please don't worry, it happens. And okay, so you comforting them. Control emotions, yes. So you see, just because the other person is crying, you also don't have to start crying. Control your emotions, because if you both start crying, the listening is not going to happen. Alright, and in the end, take notes. Now, you don't have to take notes when you have informal conversations with your people, but when you're actually in a meeting with a client, take notes. One, the good thing is that you don't have to remember everything. It will be written. You can refer to it anytime you like, at any point in time, even after 10 years if you like. Alright, and taking note also shows the other person that you take them seriously. So now let's look at active listening techniques. What are these techniques? Number one, sense their non-verbal message. Don't just concentrate on the words, concentrate on the way they're expressing through non-verbal. A lot of times it may happen that we may not be able to express with words, but when you see that their eyes are watery, you know that the hurt is much more deeper, that the pain is much more deeper, and they are not expressing it in words for some reason. You have to understand and catch the non-verbal cues. Monitor your non-verbal and filter. Obviously, when you are listening to someone, you have to monitor that your non-verbal as well. You're listening to someone, you cannot look here and there and have your attention diverted. You're going to look at that person and also, give that idea that you're listening to them with the right body language, right posture, leaning towards them a little bit so that they know that you're interested in what they're saying. And speaking about filters, what happens is there are times when you realize that you do not like a person, and that person could be a colleague, a subordinate, your boss. Now you will still have to listen to it, not because you like or dislike that person, because your work requires you to do it. Now in that case, you have to remove your filter of not liking that person out and listen to that person. Otherwise it'll be a bad communication. Delay your evaluation. Don't just jump to conclusion. Listen to that person, let them complete, maintain eye contact. These are the things that you need to keep in mind, which are good techniques of listening. Let's look at 10 rules of good listening. Number 1 is listen to understand, not to respond. Let them complete, don't just jump. Okay. Number 2 thing that you need to do is don't interrupt. What we end up doing always is we jump to conclusion, we interrupt, or we just say, oh yeah, I understood, this is what you mean, and they mean something else. So just because a person behaves in a certain way, and then you might assume that that person is again going to behave in the same way, and then you end up saying, I know what you're going to say, but actually that person may be saying something else. So don't interrupt. That's very important. And if you have any distortions around, like your phone which might keep ringing, just put it on silent for a while, just for humanity's sake. Next thing is to do is suspend judgment. Like I said, if you don't like a person, fine, you have to still work with that person. So suspend any judgment whatsoever, and remove all the filters and listen to that person attentively. Next thing that you need to do is ask questions. Why ask questions? Because if you ask them right questions, you will probe, and then you will get a deeper understanding. If they are hurt, tell them what's happening, what's bothering you, is there something that I can do to help you? See, that way you ask questions and you'll have a deeper understanding of what they're trying to say. Like I just said a while back, look at the expressions and it will talk a lot more than the words do. What next? The next rule that you need to keep in mind is acknowledge what you hear. You need to nod, okay? You need to say, like, yes, I understand, please don't worry. Give that acknowledgement so that they know that they haven't lost you and you're there. Alright, and try and forget yourself. Even if you're, let's say you're a boss and you're speaking to someone who's at a very junior position, you have to understand, try to forget something. Now, next is try to forget yourself. Even if you're a boss and you're speaking to someone at a very junior level, when you listen to that person, try and forget yourself for a while. Try and forget that you are at a senior position, and just listen to that person without any filter in your mind. Keep your designation away for some time. Now, next thing that I might want to share with you. Is the fact that a lot of times, understand this, okay? I train people on behavioral aspects as well, and I know this for a fact that a lot of times people just want to listen. Now, a lot of times people just want you to listen to them. They don't want any advice, any suggestions. They just want someone to listen to them. Alright? And they automatically feel lighter after that. But a lot of times what people end up doing is that they listen and then they actually start giving advice. Now, that person may be talking about something personal, somebody may be speaking about her husband, or somebody may be speaking about his wife. Now, in that case, kids, close family, in that case, if somebody comes and tells you that, please remember that there may be a chance where that person just wants you to listen and not any advice. You might advise something and they may not like it because it is against their family. In that case, what is going to happen is that you will be seen as a bad person. Okay, because family will always come together and you would always be an outsider. So just remember, whenever you want to give an advice or suggestion, please ask for permission. Don't just give it for free, nobody wants it. Give it only when needed. Please save yourself the embarrassment. We've been speaking about this a lot, haven't we? Check the body language. Okay, you cannot listen and at the same time without actually portraying the right body language. You can't say I'm listening to you when you're typing something and you're not even looking at me. That's wrong. Be careful of your body language. And one last thing that you need to keep in mind is keep an open mind. Understand that people are different. I have a different world. Okay, my world is defined by the experiences that I've had in my life. Your world is defined by the experiences that you have had in your life. In that case, please remember that you and I, we may have similar choices, but at the same time we can still be very different. So keep an open mind when somebody is saying something. Understand that they have a different world, understand that they can be different, and listen to them. Okay, now let's talk about what causes poor listening. Number one, not concentrating. You're distracted with your phone or your email, or somebody's talking and multiple people are talking at the same time, and you are working and listening at the same time, and so basically you're not concentrating. That's one major cause. Number two is jumping to conclusion. We don't let people finish and then we jump to conclusion. We are very good at assuming things. We're very good at judging. Avoid that. And also, I've seen a lot of times people focus too much on personal appearance. Alright, so what you do is you actually do not give a lot of attention to that person just because of the personal appearances. So just avoid that. Alright, so every speech has something to offer. You are cheating yourself if you choose not to listen. Nothing is more deadly to communication than this. This is like not listening in communication is like committing a suicide. Okay, don't do that. Now, we actually have a very interesting finding about this. Why is it difficult to listen? Very interesting findings. One, a lot of times we say that we are not in the mood. Now, that's silly and that's funny, but actually that's the way it is. All right, we do saturate it with a lot of things and then we say we're not in the mood. Number two is external disturbance, which is fine. You're in a place where there's a lot of noise, which is why it'll become difficult to listen. Next is speed difference. Some people speak very fast, some speak very, very slow, because of which you as a person might run out of patience because you're not used to that speed, that slow speed of listening. Do you understand that point? So speed difference also is a factor that contributes to this. No interest, lack of interest in the person or in the topic. No personal benefit. A lot of times we don't listen if it is not of any benefit to us, which again is not right. And too much of efforts required, that's what people tell, and which is a fact, by the way. You know, the efforts needed to speak well is equivalent to the amount of efforts needed to listen well, because when you listen, you give attention, you avoid distractions, you give non-verbal feedback, okay, and then you actually give a verbal feedback as well, saying yeah, I understand, you acknowledge it. So it's much more than speaking. All right, what are the barriers in listening then? Barriers could be perceptual barrier, wherein for you one thing might be right and for me the same thing might not be right. We have different perceptions about the same thing, which is what a physical barrier is, and which is what a perceptual barrier is. Physical barrier could be two people at different locations, and that could be a barrier in listening. Emotional barrier is some people are very logical when some are emotional, sentimental. So if a sentimental person is having conversation with a person who is very logical, if a sentimental or an emotional person is actually expressing emotions and expressing how he or she feels in front of a person who's logical, what is going to happen is that the logical person may not be so well emotionally connected, or may not be able to respond emotionally to it, which can be a barrier, because the person who is emotional, who is just driven more by emotions, so he might think that the person is not interested, or the person is not actually involved in this heart-to-heart conversation. But the fact is, it's not that the person who is logical or analytical doesn't understand. It's just that he keeps emotions aside when he takes a decision or when he talks about things, because he is not just like you. So that could be an emotional barrier. Language barrier is very simple. Two people, different languages, it becomes very difficult. So remember, a very good quote from Dalai Lama. It says, when you talk, you only repeat what you're saying, but when you actually listen, you may learn something new.